we are live.
Good morning. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission's APS Grants Program. Panel number 1, I am Ryan Shelton, pronouns he, him. I am the Regional Arts Partner for Region 7 and the Partnership Manager for Nickel Plate Arts in Noblesville. Today is May 5th, and we are meeting online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. There is no contact between the panel and the audience about the disposition of applicants before, during, or after the panel meeting. This meeting will be recorded and made available upon request. At this time, I'll individually invite each of the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, saying their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. Let's start with the panel. Aaron?
Hi, my name is Erin Williams. I am the Executive Director of the Muncie Arts and Culture Council, and I am coming here from Muncie.
JC?
Hi, I'm JC Saig. I am the Campus and Guest Experience Coordinator at Nickel Plate Arts, and I am calling from Noblesville, Indiana this morning.
Chris?
Hi, Chris Bishop, calling in from Indianapolis, Indiana, work at Marian University. I also sit on the board of directors for the Central Indiana Dance Ensemble.
Lana?
Hello, I'm Alonda Gregory. I am calling from Dubuque, Iowa. I am a creative entrepreneur, owner of Triphoenix Group and Triphoenix Media.
Nancy?
I am Nancy Lafferty. I am the president of the Belfry Board of Directors, the administrative directors of the Belfry Theater in Noblesville. I'm coming to you from Fishers.
Eric?
Good morning, Eric Ashby. I am the Grants and Research Manager for the Indiana Arts Commission, running all the tech things today.
Paige?
Hi, everybody. Paige Sharp, Deputy Director of Programs for the Indiana Arts Commission, and I'm here to help with policy clarification if needed.
Excellent. We'll now begin the panel. I'm going to serve as the facilitator today to kind of keep things on track. I will announce the application. We'll review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We are not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspective panelists bring to the table. After the second reader is finished, I will open the discussion for final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we're only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed on hold while the application was reviewed. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of their broader discussion. These scores save automatically. Panelists, are there any questions? Let's begin. We will start with the application from Actors Inc. I don't think there's any panelists that need to be put on hold. Our first reader is not available today, so we're going to start with the second reader. JC, you're up. Please start when you're ready.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So starting with the application for our Actors Inc., kind of just starting with the general artist quality area. The applicant's goals were clearly laid out. The plans to utilize past experience with this project could have been further explained, at least as I was reading it. The project description and artist documentation, those both showcase the project's intention to provide meaningful, impactful, and quality artistic, authentic experiences. They both detail a passion and a willingness to serve their targeted communities. On to the artist support. The applicant details how the project will financially benefit artists. However, alongside including local Indianapolis artists, they also note that the project will include guest speakers and guest instructors, but that many will be from Indiana, kind of indicating that not all of them will be from Indiana. I think that could have probably been specified a little further, if possible. Going on to the community engagement areas, for the most part, really, really strong. The applicant describes the underserved communities that will benefit from this project in great detail. The organization also describes how the project will be developed with that specific community throughout the entirety of the project. And then all those idea strategies are not as strongly identified, though mentions of inclusion and diversity are mentioned through this section. How to combat any boundaries to equity or accessibility probably could have been elaborated on. The applicant lists 2 methods and tools that will be used to measure impact, but I think they could have probably specified how throughout the project that could have been implemented. And then the sampling marketing materials provided include a variety of promotion. Their social media does reflect community and they plan to serve, or the community they plan to serve with this project. However, the posts kind of seem to be a little far and few between, so it's difficult to say whether or not it's reasonable to expect the projected participation figures based off of that. And then moving on to the project management area, the applicant's staffing appears to be enough to carry out the project. However, I feel like they could have elaborated a little more on the relevant experiences that the staff has that would make them a good fit specifically for this project. The timeline described includes, I think, adequate time for planning, execution, and follow-up for this project. I think there's room to be a little more detailed on specific dates, but it's understandable, at least in my eyes, that the organization would need to be flexible at this stage. To me, the budget seems reasonable. The figures made sense to me. And I think, so overall, a pretty strong application. I think they could have elaborated a little more in some areas, but that is all I've got.
Thank you, JC. Any new additional or opposing panelist comments? So feel free to jump in.
I do want to comment. I would have liked to have seen, when I'm looking at the marketing, like what, the measure of marketing. I was saying they were offer similar marketing deliverables. I would like to have seen the detail of that. I do agree with you, JC, when it just looking at, like, far as the artists, bringing it outside. I like the visibility, what they where they're having it, how they're having it, and what is the actual greater impact? What is the actual funding? It was a little sketchy for me. I couldn't actually understand or differentiate which is which, but overall, it's a strong application.
Any other comments or additions?
It was a delight to read. I'm going to go with the first reader just in terms of community engagement and the idea narrative. I would have just liked to have seen in part 3 where they describe who they serve and the specific populations, maybe just a little bit deeper statistics of exactly maybe like percentages, et cetera, something along those points. And then JC also mentioned, I think I should just want to reiterate, maybe just a little bit more of a discussion of from a physical accessibility standpoint. I would have liked to have seen in this particular grant more mention or detail of that. Thank you.
All right. Please finalize your scores and updating any comments that you have. A little thought, yeah. Let me know if you need more time. Everybody okay? Okay. The next application is from Agape Theater Company. I don't think we have any conflicts of interest with this one. The first reader is Erin. Whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you. So I really enjoyed this application. I thought it was very thorough. It sounds like Agape is, very well respected in the community and does really fantastic theater work that is highly detailed and is drawing from a lot of different historical examples. They did a great job explaining sort of what they do and linking their particular performances back to more like contemporary topics, such as like racism, bigotry, things like that. I appreciated that they added that in. Let me see here. As far as artist support, that was one area where I was really lacking in some information. I think that could have been fleshed out a bit more. One critique that I had was the payment for, it looks like their directors received stipends, and that was listed in the application itself, the narrative, but I don't think it was illustrated below in the budget. And then I was really surprised. I was surprised to see that there was a fee for participation, which really doesn't seem like it amounts to a lot in the application itself. So I was not completely sure why that fee was implemented for some of the participants and not others. Which made me wonder if like a sponsorship or something could be, utilized in a different way to help offset that. I thought that was maybe a partial barrier to some participation, or had some influence in how they were able to provide outreach to underserved communities. I'm really happy to see that the directors were paid for their work, and they seem to be well compensated. It also sounds like the plays are really, as they move forward through from year to year, it looks like they're looking at plays that have sort of contemporary commentary to make. I would love to hear more about sort of how they plan to utilize that kind of direction of choosing plays that are both popular, but also plays that have, contemporary issues that are attached to them. A couple questions that I had moving forward were about like the tickets. I noticed that a lot of their income comes from ticket sales. And I was wondering if any of those tickets were subsidized, or if that was also just part of they mentioned that they have lower ticket prices in order to compensate for people who don't have a lot of money to spend on theater. But I think, other methods within that, I think would be interesting to know more about. And the other question that I had as I was reading through was more information about how the company is actually creating an environment for actor development. They mentioned a few times how they reach out with questions and survey questions about, what people have experienced, but they didn't give much information about the answers that they received back. So I would have really appreciated learning a little bit more about what the actual outcomes were in that case.
Thank you, Aaron. The second reader is Chris. You're ready.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Aaron. So along kind of the same lines, I'm looking at my notes. Give me 1 second. In section 3 of community engagement and idea, I noted in my comments that I loved that reduced tuition and how you described that from an inclusion perspective. I know Aaron had mentioned the fees and whatnot, and that is definitely discussed. Go further and saying you guys have never turned anybody away, so that was a big plus. Also, interestingly, like I made a comment that I absolutely love your guys' analysis of ticket prices. I thought that was a really strong add to this grant. So I think you should be applauded for that. I've never seen it noted in that way, and they're 100% spot on from my opinion. In terms of the, one moment, please. In terms of the artistic support, and it also kind of starts sliding into the budget, I guess I'm interested in hearing from the panel, any comments in terms of, like, I'm just a little bit confused on who's being paid and how much total they're being paid. And I read through this just a couple times and just kind of just decided I was just a little bit confused. And so I just was curious if there was any other comments. I just feel like it says line 2 states that $4,700 will be paid to the production as stipends. And then it says artists will collectively earn $630. Does that mean $630 each? Because if so, by my math, which could be suspect, only comes to $3,780 with the 6 directors listed. If it's $630 total, which I think it is, I don't necessarily feel like I see that represented in the budget. I see a line for $1,400 for stipends. So I'm just not for sure where this number is coming from and what it represents. Outside of that budgetary item, I don't have any other comments to make.
Thank you, Chris. Any new additional or opposing panelists' comments? All right. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. And let me know if you need more time. All right. The next application is from Arthentic Arts Incorporated. I don't think we have any conflict of interest on this one. All right. The first reader is JC. When you're ready, please.
Alrighty, thank you, Ryan. I'm pulling up my notes now, and starting with the artistic quality of the project. To me, the project purpose and goals were made clear throughout the description. The impact was listed, and I enjoyed reading through how this would be an expansion upon a previous project. One thing that I thought could have been expanded on was the impact that the previously coordinated project had. And I had questions for the applicant whether they had any lasting positive effects based on the last project, any positive effects from the last years that have been documented. I think that could have been elaborated on a little more. And then moving on to artist support, it appears that the applicant included the specific number of artists that they supported in the last iteration of this project and the ones that they hope to financially support with this current one. So it seems like they're not entirely sure yet, or that just hasn't been solidified. That's one area that maybe could have been clarified a little bit, but understandable if they don't quite have that fleshed out yet. And then moving on to the community engagement area, it seems that the applicant has a strong understanding of the communities that they are engaging and working with. And they clearly describe all the idea strategies that will be implemented throughout the process, which was very enjoyable to read. And then the measuring impact, they seem to have an idea for both during the project and after the project, which was helpful. I thought the methods could have been elaborated on a little more, but overall it seemed like the organization expressed a strong interest in being flexible to their community's needs. And then the marketing materials in that area reflect their ability to engage with the people they wish to work with, and based on the frequency of posts and event-specific flyers that they provided, it seems that the projected participation figures seem pretty reasonable. Moving on to the third set, or I suppose the fourth section of project management, they have a detailed list of staff and organizations that will be involved with the project. And each staff member involved appears to have many years of experience coordinating and facilitating similar projects. And then the timeline is consistent with their goals. The only area that I felt could have been a little more detailed was the post-exhibit workshops that will continue through December. The applicant expressed interest in coordinating workshops, but don't seem to have specific details for those quite yet. And then budget-wise, it seemed pretty clear to me and pretty reasonable. And so that is all I had for that.
Thank you, JC. The second reader is Alonda. When you're ready, please.
I agree with JC. I pretty much saw the same things. It was a strong application. Also, and being at this stuff, I mean, it looks like they have, looking at this the first year, I do believe it said. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, it's pretty laid out in detail as far as the deliverables, I'm sorry. And showing how what community is supported and the artists. Actually, I don't have anything else to add.
Any new additional or opposing panelist comments?
One comment I had for the budget, I would have liked to see more of the in-kind elements laid out in the budget. I think there were some things mentioned in the narrative that didn't make it all the way to the bottom. And that just would help, I think, clarify how the planning has, occurred and what parts of the project have been completely identified and what haven't. Otherwise, I think it's a really interesting project and application. I did have a few moments where I was a little unclear, and I think this has already been mentioned about the scope of what was going to happen because of the past marketing material. It was a pretty robust, it was pretty amazing looking program. And then I wasn't completely sure if that was the intention again this year in the same scope, or if there was sort of a different pattern for the program for this year. So more information about that would have been helpful.
All right, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. We're ready. Next application is Athenaeum Foundation Incorporated. I don't think we have any conflict of interest with this one. The first reader is Chris. When you're ready, please.
Thank you, Ryan. I am trying to get to it. Give me one moment, please. So yes, I'm doing the Athenaeum Foundation and going through artistic quality. I just wanted to note the extensive and deep partnerships that they discuss. I really appreciated the high artistic quality for this particular program with the inclusion of music, food, handicrafts, and dance. So I just wanted to note that. In terms of artistic support, I really wanted to emphasize this. This is this grant specifically stated an economic benefit to the creative participants. So it wasn't just a vehicle for the event itself. This grant went a step further to explain and put that as one of their overall goals. It wasn't really kind of buried in the body of all the detail. They're saying like, we're wanting to do that. And that just really spoke to me when I went back and looked at what this grant is for. When I go to community engagement and idea, again, I really thought this grant was strong with specific and noted steps in terms of ADA accessibility. I really appreciated, because this is not a brand new project that they're working on. So you could see where they had drawn on past experiences, their expansion to include cultural holiday activities, i.e. a broader audience, hopefully. And lastly, I just wanted to reiterate that specifically from this budget and the way the budget was laid out, I could see very easily that this IAC grant money was going to go directly to artists. So great job. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Second reader is Nancy. When you're ready, please.
Yes, I would say the same. I agree with Chris. Very strong application. I had a slight question about the artistic impact. It's always very difficult to measure how an audience is going to respond to something so widespread and broad. But that is certainly not germane to that is not about the quality of the application. It's just one of those difficult things to measure. So well written and very strong.
Thank you, Nancy. Any new, additional, or opposing panelist comments?
I'd be interested to learn more about how this organization planned to expand its DEI initiatives. It talks about including specifically this year more references or participants that might have different religious beliefs or different holiday experiences, and it didn't really outline really how that would happen, whether that would be, you know, just including more vendors, including different types of performances. Maybe they don't know, but you know, whether that's just sort of like appeasing the public, or if it's really incorporating other types of experiences into the full event. I would loved to have a little more information about that, but I think otherwise it sounds like a really great program.
All right. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. So let me know if you need more time. All set. The next application is the Benjamin Harrison Presidential Site. I don't think we have any conflicts of interest with this one. The first reader is Alonda. Whenever you're ready, please.
Okay, I'm looking at my notes. Okay, when I take a look at this, I like that the culinary arts is included. This was different. I didn't, you think of arts and seeing how the intention of how they were bridging the gap with the community and the holiday. Well, I guess they could say the day of recognizing Juneteenth. Looking at the support, the artistic quality, I do see. Hold on, give me one moment, please.
Take your time. Find what you need.
Okay. Okay, I was skipping ahead of myself. Okay, yeah, I got it. So I was looking at artists being paid directly and the projected dollar amount for the artists. I was it said no artists are being paid, but then it said no, I guess they're paying the project manager. So I guess I was looking at, but I wasn't sure when I skipped down to the actual, the request for money. I didn't actually see that included. I see artist fees, and then I see that there's no artist being paid directly. So I had a little question for that one. Overall, looking at the project management and what their and what the cabinet consists of. I like the way that how they include how they have their board and the volunteers And the marketing, I like that we have the marketing on here. So I'm actually all over the place. So artistic quality, I was impressed with that, and how it was a well thought out, how they were very intentional, considering this is looking, I believe this is the first year. On my notes, I have the overall idea is exemplary. The project is interactive, is empowering, and displaying the culinary arts is a creative way with a recipe competition in honor of Dolly Johnson. I love the way that it's preserved presidential history. And then, like I said, we just took a couple of questions looking at the budget requests and how the top part that I wasn't too, I had a couple of questions with that, how that, okay. Okay, yeah. So I kind of had a question with that on how the top and the bottom, when I didn't see it included. Maybe I looked over it a couple of times. So I just wanted to have a couple of questions with that. And overall, I think this application is pretty strong. It shows who they're serving, what they plan to do, bring the community together to give a presence of the history and preserving the history. So I think the application was pretty decent and strong with this.
Thank you, Yolanda. Any new additional or opposing panelist comments? We do not have a second reader for this one.
I mean, I kind of agree with Yolanda. I mean, just in terms of my notes, again, I read through this a couple times and just had some questions. I'm just going to go ahead and read what I wrote down here in case it has some brings up some discussion. I guess I wasn't really for 100% for sure what was being specifically supported by this grant. Was it the event itself? You know, then there was the mention of the Freetown Village, which I understand, but I don't know if I saw it represented in the budget specifically. I know in one section of asking how many artists are directly financially benefiting, it states just one. But then later it says how many artists will benefit from this project. It states 5 performers. And then I guess I'm assuming that's the Freetown Village. I'm not for sure on that. And then it mentions the $200 stipend to partners who are pre-approved to create the Dolly Johnson inspired recipe. I'm not for sure if that was represented in the budget too. So I'm not for sure if those were kind of the same questions Yolanda was having as well, but I just wanted to go ahead and just mention that. And then the only other thing is I think a strong point for like this particular location would be just a mention of just to make the grant stronger, to discuss the physical accessibility of this particular site and location in this event. Thanks.
Anyone else? Please finalize your scores and update your comments if needed. Let me know if you need more time. We're ready. Excellent. The next application is from Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Indiana. I don't think we have any conflicts of interest. The first reader is Nancy. Nancy, when you're ready. You're on mute.
Sorry, I did not realize I was the first reader. This was a strong application that was very clear in the description of the project itself, who was going to be served, how they were going to be served, and the ability to impact the community itself. The project was developed well with the community. Again, very clear messaging about that, very clear idea strategies. The project management part was, I felt the staffing, of course, is very strong. I was a little vague about the timeline Maybe that's just me. And another
Nancy,
panel
do you mean with the event or with the staff?
with the staffing.
Okay.
Understaffing, the timeline. The project management timeline. As I looked at the budget, that seemed to make a great deal of sense. Very strong staffing and very strong community engagement. Again, I always tend to question a little bit that measurability of impact under artistic quality, the impact part. Other than that, very strong request and very strong project description. That's all I have.
Thank you, Nancy. Second reader is Aaron. When you're ready, please.
Yeah, I thought I was the first reader, so away we go.
My fault.
Oh, it's okay. I think it was just the order they were listed in. I really love that this program, one of the specific things that caught me and I appreciate so much is that they mentioned several times that the program was being part of the reason for doing the program was to address the need for services for children who are not already being served. And I thought that was so powerful because it's not just reaching out to your existing audience, it's reaching out really directly into audiences that you don't already have a relationship with. So I thought that was fantastic. The participating, let me see here, sorry, I've gotta keep my notes in order here. The open mic night aspect as well, I think is really great because it will sort of expand those opportunities out to a larger audience, maybe including families of students or you know, people who are looking for service from BGCB. And you know, that would be a really interesting way to sort of draw the wider community in as well. A few things that I was a little unclear about was you know, I know they have the staff for the program, and then the singular guest artist who was Dr. Hens. If, you know, whether he is the only one involved working with the children, sort of how that relationship breaks down. Maybe that's not totally fleshed out yet, which is fine. The program is still really powerful, I think, regardless, but just from a project management standpoint, you know, working with children can be a lot sometimes. So just knowing how that would be planned. The projected participation numbers, they mentioned that they used just the max occupancy. So I thought that was maybe a little high, and I would love to know more about how programs that they have done that maybe are similar to this, how they have fared in the past, because that might be a better way to gauge, you know, the actual participation. But at the same time, since this is like the first iteration, I think, of this project, I'd love to hear more, you know, in the future about how successful it is, because it sounds really just unique. And then finally, for the artist budget, again, the budget is a little bit vague, and so it made it a little bit harder to assess the artist benefit outside of what the experience is for the Dr. Hens, who's the paid artist to participate, where exactly other funding comes from to support other aspects of the project was a little unclear. But other than that, it was a great project.
Thank you, Aaron. Any new, additional, or opposing panelist comments?
Yeah, I just pretty much agree with the two that just noted on there. You know, I did read it a couple times, and I felt like the budget was a little bit confusing to me in terms of the artists being directly paid, and then saying how much they're going to be being paid, and making sure that is represented both in the artistic support, and then kind of, I guess I'm typically looking kind of for a mirror of that in the budget. And I felt like I was kind of digging around a little bit. On the flip side, I just want to say fantastic community engagement and idea section. So
Anyone else? All right, please finalize your scores and update comments if necessary. So let me know if you need more time. We're going pretty quick. If I go too quick at any time like that, just give me a holler. We'll slow down for you. The next application is from the Boone County 4-H Fairboard. Our first reader is not available. So, JC, you'll start us off, please.
All righty. So just starting at the top with the artistic quality, it seems that the goals of this project are described very clearly. The project description and documentation show that this has the capacity to provide a meaningful experience for folks. However, I think there might be room to include maybe other organizations that have coordinated a similar event or similar projects that the applicant has coordinated in the past. And this would kind of strengthen the ability to prove that this project could provide a meaningful and quality artist experience or artistic experience for folks. However, I do think that overall it's a very, very strong idea. With artist support, I think they were clear. They lay out pretty much exactly how the project will directly and financially benefit the work of 2 Indiana artists. And they even include the artists that they're hoping to contract, which is always fun to see and kind of explore and see what they're going on with. With community engagement, I think there's probably room for the applicant to describe the underserved communities that this project will serve, while they kind of mention that anyone can kind of come in and that this is an event for everybody. I think there's room to maybe expand or explore a little more on if there are any underserved communities that they have in mind for this project. And then the community that the applicant highlighted will looks like they have limited input on this project, and they don't necessarily have involved input throughout the entire process. I could be reading that wrong, but and along those lines, it kind of makes sense. It seems like a more educational program more than anything else. So it makes sense that the community wouldn't exactly have input throughout the whole thing. So that was one area I was a little conflicted on. And then the applicant highlights 2 idea strategies, specifically inclusion and accessibility. Any boundaries regarding diversity and equity were not mentioned, or at least I didn't read it that way. It does appear that they will strive to make this project as open to as many viewers as possible. But I think there still might be some room in that diversity and equity areas. And then the marketing materials reflects that this organization has a strong online presence and would have be able to serve the folks that they're hoping to serve, and that the projected participation figures seem reasonable. Project management wise, it looks like they do have staffing identified to carry out this project. And it looks like the lead staff is experienced in this way. And I had a note that while it appears that the lead staff on the team have been on the team long enough to experience similar projects, it's not quite elaborated on. I feel like there's probably a little room for clarification on what strengths and experiences they're bringing to this project. And then the planning process and timeline, I think it gives plenty of time for planning and execution and follow-up for this event. I think there might be some room to include some more details on specific time and dates. But given that maybe they might want to be a little flexible in this area, and so I can understand maybe not being as specific. And then budget-wise, I don't think I had any questions. It seems reasonable, but I'm also not quite a numbers person. And that's all I had.
Thank you, JC. Any new additional or opposing panelist comments?
Yeah, I agree with JC. I would like to have seen I'm a big 4-H guy, so I really enjoyed reading this particular grant. Any way that you guys could either explain or maybe in the future partner, maybe with like a local artist group, art community, or an environmental community, I was kind of thinking, just in terms of, again, I know JC had kind of mentioned that from a partnering standpoint, I think might benefit the overall grant a little bit. That's all.
I also would like to have seen a little more clarification on community engagement, but a strong proposal.
And basically how they might engage the community or what their process is.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Please finalize your scores and update comments if necessary. Let me know if you need more time. The next application was the Carmel International Arts Festival. We do have a conflict. Eric, if you could please put Chris in the waiting room. Thank you. First reader is Aaron. Whenever you're ready, please.
Okay. So this is obviously a really long-running, well-known program. And so I thought it was interesting to read it from a perspective that's not completely like economic development and really thinking through it as an arts project. I thought was pretty interesting. One thing they state towards the beginning is their interest in sort of this participatory educational component. But it was unclear to me really how that works. And maybe that particular aspect could be explained more. I love that they spend a lot of their efforts to put together scholarships and different ways that students can be involved. And I absolutely agree that the arts fair as an entity is a really important component for students to understand and be able to engage with. It still is sort of an element like a market. So, you're still required to purchase things, or that's kind of the end game. But when people do purchase things, the artists are able to, receive support. So that was, it has elements of possibility where it could be really beneficial to people, but that also really depends on sort of what the community and the crowd is doing at that particular time. But since this is such a well-known program, I'm sure it does benefit many people highly. There's only about 25%, it said, of artisans come from Indiana. So as an international art fair, I could see how that is beneficial for people wanting to see new things, but maybe does not have the same artistic support for statewide artists. One thing I wasn't very clear on was sort of what the outlay was for artists who want to participate. If they have to, pay, if they're paying for entry fee to apply to the show, or are they paying at some point for the ability to be in the show once they are juried in? That wasn't really mentioned, but at the in the budget level, it was the entry fees were listed, and I don't think that those are entry fees for people participating, but I wasn't really sure, or if that was people attending, like how that whole system works, which I'm sure is pretty robust and complicated and hard to fit into a grant. But that would be some areas where I think the applicant could flesh out a little bit more as how the IAC, specifically that funding, might be implemented towards more of the idea aspects and more towards the educational or community aspects, and not just sort of general funding towards the fair itself. But otherwise, I think, it's a really wonderful program and it's a really wonderful project. I'm glad that this is something that the community has access to, and I would love to know more about how the organizers are working to just expand the audience that they have.
Thank you, Aaron. The second reader is Nancy. When you're ready, please.
I agree very much with what you said, Aaron, but under the idea strategies, I would like to see a little bit of discussion about accessibility for attenders, participants, performers. Obviously, the diversity issue is well documented by the title of the event itself, but accessibility is important to me, and I would like to see a little bit of discussion on that. Otherwise, I had the very same response that Aaron did about trying to figure out who and how the application process to get in, how does one get in there to be able to be part of this. But very strong event and very strong grant.
Thank you, Nancy. Any new, additional, or opposing panelist comments? Please finalize your scores and update comments if necessary. Does anybody need more time before we let Chris in? All right. Next application is from the city of Franklin. I don't think we have any conflict of interest. First reader is JC. When you're ready, please.
All righty. Thank you, Ryan. Getting my notes up now. So this was overall a very fun and strong project to read. I think that the goals were clearly stated out and backed up with ample research that the applicant conducted. It looks like that the project description and the artistic documentation visually showcased the researched portions and kind of strengthened the whole notion that the organization has a wish to create meaningful and impactful art experiences. With the art support, it looks like there might be a little room to expand on how the artist will benefit throughout the process of the whole project. I had some questions on will the artist or how the artist will be recognized by the city that they're serving. And so those were kind of my questions regarding that. And then community engagement. Let's see, the applicant does describe the underserved communities that they wish to benefit from this project. And it looks like they described in a previous section how the community at large will benefit from this involved project as well. And then the applicant organization kind of expressed a wish to reach out to other organizations to connect with a wider audience and provide information in multiple languages and invite a more kind of project panel. They don't detail how these connections will fully fulfill the idea strategies, and maybe that was me gleaming and not quite reading into it. And it looks like they want to emphasize inclusion, diversity, and accessibility, but not they haven't quite elaborated on how. And then the applicant looks like they had an idea for measuring the project's impact. And I felt there might have been a little more room to elaborate on why the organization wanted to measure the specific impacts that they noted. I think it was level of diversity and reception from the current supporters and volunteers. I think there's also room to specify on how they will measure certain impacts, such as the level of diversity found on. It looks like they'll have a community painting day. And I was interested to see how they could measure the impact of like the level of diversity on such a day. I was wondering if they would do it through like attendance numbers or another method, et cetera. And then it looks like they have a strong marketing materials and social media and web presence. And it looks like when I was looking through their social media, it looks like, and I could be wrong, maybe I was doing it, maybe I wasn't quite clicking all through the right things. It looked like their Facebook page has limited access. And so I was seeing as they had limited access to their Facebook page, I didn't know if that was trying to keep the group small or whatever, or trying to just, keep it limited. But it made it difficult to determine if the project participations would seem reasonable and how often they posted and whatnot. Project management wise, it looks like there is a reasonable number of staff to carry out the project. I felt there could have been a little room to elaborate on the relevant experience and interest that the staff had that would make them a good fit for this project. And it looks like the timeline looked reasonable to me. However, it looks like follow-up on the project isn't mentioned. From a project management standpoint, that's one thing that's kind of important to me, is just follow-up on the project itself. And then I don't think I had any questions on the budget. It looked reasonable to me, and that's all I had.
Thank you, JC. The second reader is Alonda. Whenever you're ready, please. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute two things. Yes, I agree with JC. I don't have anything else. I pretty much saw some of the same things. So overall, I like the application, and I don't have any other input.
Any new, additional, or opposing comments?
I have a couple comments I'd like to make.
Please.
Really excited to read this. It's one of these grants that has potentially a large impact. So I thought that was interesting. I would have liked, I think, to make it the grant proposal stronger, I would have liked personally to have seen, like, on average, how long does something like this last? I'm sure high quality materials are used, etc. The impact to the artists is small because we're just hiring one in terms of kind of like the way that I read the budget, but the impact to the greater public from an artistic standpoint is great. So I would just like to know, and I know other communities have done this kind of thing, and that's what made me so interested in it. But I just don't know. Along that line, I love the comment in your goals where you're talking about how this is more than the impact that this has on communities, etc. Even that piece, there was a piece in there on how it can impact how fast, maybe it can impact traffic flow even. And I was really interested in that. And to make that even stronger, I would have loved to seen some citations for that, just to really kind of back up that statement. And I think this, from what I read, this would be, I'd really be interested in hearing, if you get the opportunity to do this, like, what does the city of Franklin learn about this process moving forward on the next go around? It really seems as though this is something you're interested in doing, and that this grant could provide that first step of, like, let's really figure out how this is really going to go. We think we know, but this is the first time. And so I'd love to see that infused on the next go around of all the lessons learned. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I had one comment to make regarding the sort of idea section. I appreciate that the community is trying to engage more diversity, and that they outline some specific cultural groups that they would like to participate with. But I was curious why they didn't just start with that as the potential artist instead of including them as a subgroup. Because I'm sure that there are artists that are in that area that come from those specific cultural groups that would be applicants. It sort of just seemed like a secondary addition. And so that was just a thought I had, that maybe if this was to be an ongoing project, it might be interesting to just wrap those two things together and make the project about those communities rather than just including them sort of tangentially.
All right, please finalize your scores and comments if necessary. Let me know if you need more time. The next application is from the city of Greenwood Parks and Recreation. I don't think we have any conflicts with this one. Chris, you are the first reader when you're ready. Chris, you're on mute. I don't know if you're talking yet, but
I wasn't talking. I wasn't ready. I apologize.
no worries. We'll get that. Yeah.
Okay, City of Greenwood and the public art sculptures of an ongoing project. The only comment that I made in terms of goals specifically is I think that this grant could have just went into a little bit more detail on specifics and goals. I think that because it is a reoccurring project, they went into it a little bit from the viewpoint of what they know about it versus what me as a reader not knowing about it. So I would have just liked to have had a little bit more background of that and then how that would infuse into your goals. In terms of artistic support, this grant lays out specifically, and this is very strong, that 95% of the monies that they're asking for is going directly back to the artists. So I think that's just incredibly strong, and I applaud you for that. Going on down to community engagement and IDEA. Let me take a look at my notes. Specifically mentioned ADA compliance within this grant. So was super excited to see that, and full bullet points and discussion on that, and just definitely wanted to bring that up. I don't know if this is one I've went back and forth on. Should I mention or not? In terms of, there's a whole section in there on how you are selecting pieces and including the community and the different groups, and that was wonderful. A part of me just kind of wanted to see, like, what is that scoring rubric that you're using as an example? I don't really know if that's possible within the framework of this, but I'm going to go ahead and just say it. And I just think it could have added a little bit more depth as I was reading through. Project management and budget. I didn't have any other specific comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Second reader is Nancy. Nancy, when you're ready, please.
Yes, I agree with much of what Chris said. I would have liked a little bit more under the IDEA strategies beyond accessibility, a little bit more to diversity and other issues. I also thought that marketing could have been supported a little more strongly. I did like that, as Chris said, 95% of the money goes directly to the artists. Thought that under project management, I thought the timeline could have been perhaps a little clearer as well. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Any new additional or opposing panelists' comments?
I was wondering, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Alonda first, and then we'll come back there.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I agree with Nancy. And beyond the accessibility, I would have liked to have seen more of a detail with the IDA, with the diversity. What is the detail of the artists? Are you reaching out to them as far as the marketing, as well as that would have been, it was hard to tell, but I love the idea of 95% is going back to the artist. I do like that. That's it.
Aaron?
I just wanted to scroll down and make sure I'm one thing that I kind of been wondering about in the budget was how this project overall is supported. The expenses are the artist stipends and honorariums, but I imagine that this has some administrative components and has some installation components, and that didn't seem to have any representation in the grant. So I think it just would also help me understand how the whole project comes together overall, since it's something that is pretty robust and has been going on for a few years. That was the only piece I was missing.
I agree. I have comments based on that as well, that I really didn't get into. Just a little bit of detail there, I think would have been nice.
All right, please finalize your scores and update any comments. Let me know if you need any more time here. We're going to take a short break here. If you could set us up for that. Eric, are you okay there if we take about a 5-minute break?
Yep.
Usually
5 minutes work will return at 11:11.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure all our panelists are back and we'll get started again. Just a moment for Chris. Chris, are you with us? Excellent. All right, welcome back. We're going to get started with the next application, which is from the city of Westfield. I do not believe we have any conflicts. First read is Alonda. When you're ready, please. Make sure you guys are off mute. I got a lot of, yeah, there you go. She's on it.
There I am. Okay. Let's see. Well, overall, I'm looking at it. I love the idea. This application, it really caught my eye because of the preservation of the public, with the park benches. Seeing how this is a new one, and they're kind of following another city that have a similar project, so they're kind of basing off of what they've seen and how the success of it. So they measured their success based off of, even though it's a new project, but they measured the success or how it's actually implemented in another town. So, and the artist support and what they just want to give for the artist. I think that's pretty amazing. What I would like to have seen, after the fact, after this is over, what is the preservation? How will they, what are the things that they're going to do to keep it like this? That would have been kind of good to see, to include that. Like, I don't think we actually ever think about things like that when we actually implement a project. What is the longevity of it? I like the mural map. There's something else in here. I believe the IDA, I like the accessibility because looking at the accessibility of it and where it will be the rest, the diversity and inclusion. See, I'm outside of the area, so I don't know exactly what the demographic is. So I don't know exactly like how the artists are being, what are the call for artists? Who are they? What is the thing? That I would have liked to have more information about that. But overall, I am not a numbers person either. But looking at what I've seen, the budget seems to be laid out. It appears that they are intentional with, what the amount is. I think that it might need more, because I'm looking at the budget. I think they're kind of like under, not far as a request is concerned, but I'm thinking about just overall. I think it could have been probably a little more considering what it is and what it may look like, give a little more room. But like, again, I'm not a numbers person. Overall, the application is pretty strong. I just would have liked to have seen more other ideas, of the idea.
Thank you, Yolanda. The second reader's Joy. When you're ready, please. Oh, sorry. She's not. My apologies. I was just reading my notes instead of paying attention. She's not available. Any new additional or opposing panelist comments?
I have a few. Aaron, go ahead. You were getting ready to talk, Aaron.
Oh, it's okay. You can go.
Okay. In terms of gold stars, things I loved the marketing selfie part that you guys mentioned. That I just thought that was unique, from a marketing standpoint. Are you working in conjunction with any local or state art groups, councils, schools, art partners? I think that could be important, whether you are list those. And if not, maybe that could be some type of partnership that you could look into, possibly. I think that the other thing, just to make it stronger, would be, it seems as though you're purchasing 10 of these concrete benches. I wasn't able to figure that out personally reading this budget reading this grant until I got to the budget portion. I couldn't tell that you were going out and buying those and not just for a while I thought we were just painting over old ones, current old ones. So I just think that would make it stronger moving forward. So that's all I had. A lot of fun reading. Thanks.
Aaron?
Yeah, I love this project because I know that these are done in many communities. With this type of project, I just would say my concern with this application was whether there had been enough research and development done to figure out how exactly this would be implemented. That was where I was really missing some information. And I totally agree with the sentiment of partnering maybe with another organization that has more experience doing public art. Or perhaps this community does have experience with that, just making that more apparent in the application itself. There were a few points, what is the full project start to finish? How will artists be managed and assisted? I know with public projects like this, oftentimes artists are emerging. They don't know a lot about doing public art. Will they have some resources to draw from? That was not clear in the application. Also, when working with children, that was another element that was highlighted that was sort of drawing into the idea, concepts, and making sure that this was accessible to a lot of population groups. I think that's really great. But I also want to caution that sometimes working with wide ranges of groups of people with different skill sets can also be pretty expansive in the amount of work that it's going to take from an administrative standpoint. And that didn't seem to have much resonance in the application itself. So those were the things I just was a little nervous about. I think they're all very things that are easy to fix by just explaining a little bit more in depth about how the project is going to actually occur, and how the resources are going to be utilized by the particular community, since it does not seem like they have a lot of pre-existing experience.
Anybody else? All right, please finalize your scores. All right. Go. The next application is from Conner Perry Museum Incorporated. We're going to put Nancy Lafferty in the waiting room, please. We do not have a first reader for this grant, correct? That's just in the notes, so I'll make sure. So Aaron, we're going to start with you on this one, please.
Okay. Just a second. Lost a window. So yeah, I really enjoy this application a lot. I thought this was such a strong application because it really identifies very clearly how it relates to the IAC Arts Project Grant. The Conner Prairie is obviously a large institution. They clearly know how to use their past experience and data to develop new experiences, which I think is really great to see, especially when you know the project is being developed by a large organization or larger organization. They also have dedicated their programs to tell diverse stories, and they do that very effectively, working with diverse theater casts and practitioners. I thought that was fantastic, and that they recognize that they don't have the ability to necessarily do this entire process in-house, that they are partnering with another very strong community organization with the Asante Theater Company. And that I think is just a really smart way to engage with this type of programming. And I was really excited just to read about all the parts of it. I don't think there was really anything that I left reading, wondering more about it. It seemed very clear and very concise to me.
Thank you. Any new additional or opposing panelist comments? Let's finalize our scores, please. Let me know if you need more time. Give it a second. All right, we're good. Eric, if you'd please let back in Nancy. The next application is from the Front Porch Music Festival. JC has a conflict with this one and the next grant, so if you could excuse them, please, Eric. Again, our first reader is not available for this one, so Chris, we're going to start with you on this one when you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Front Porch Music Festival. Give me one moment. I'll get right to my notes. I've kind of reiterated this before, but I wanted to specifically state with this grant proposal that it was very strong, that I love the amount of direct support that is going directly to artists, Indiana artists specifically, and also the addition through feedback and whatnot, expanding to a diverse style of bands for this music festival. Really strong points within that grant. I think this is just my opinion. I don't know how others feel, but I'm going to go ahead and just say it. I feel more comfortable saying it. Again, this grant specifically, both, in the budget, it directly impacts Indiana artists. You can see it. It's, again, of the grant. This is we're bringing in these Indiana artists. And I think you should come right out and say that in the grant, to be perfectly honest. I think that there's no reason, not that you're purposely hiding it, but I think it's such a strong point that I would come out and almost lead off with it. So that's just my opinion. In terms of community and IDA, just a question. You mentioned working with a musician advisory panel. I would have loved to have seen just a little bit more detail of who that is and who that's made up of, kind of that community involvement. New this year, you're offering large print programs. Awesome. I love to see that from the ADA accessibility standpoint. On the flip side of that, I wasn't for sure, and I read through it a couple of times. I think it could be a little bit stronger because of the makeup of how you guys are doing this particular event. Just what's your thought process from an ADA and physical accessibility standpoint? I'm not looking for, personally as a grant reader, that it's a done deal and that it's perfect. I sometimes feel as though that's left out because maybe it's not good. I'm reading it from a grant perspective to see that you've addressed it and that you understand, and we're starting from a certain spot and then trying to improve it instead of just not bringing it up. So that's, again, just my opinion. And then the no cost admission, wonderful. I just thought that was excellent. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any new additional or opposing panelist comments?
I have one. I have to agree with Chris. Looking at it from being that this has happened a lot, it's every year. From a grant reviewer perspective and someone from the outside, again, I'm in another state, but I do just want to say that looking at it, the ADA, accessibility, if, we can't just assume those are my concerns as well. It's great that I'm looking at the diversity and everything, but other things we know how, you've been doing this a long time, but being someone else is looking at it and there's other concerns, like far as budget, it'd have been nice to detail that accessibility piece. And overall, everything else, I actually think that's a strong application.
Anyone else? All right, finalize your scores, please. Does anybody need more time? The next application is Gal's Guide to the Galaxy. Again, JC has a conflict with this. So they're still out. Oh, our first reader is Aaron. When you're ready, please.
Okay. So this was a really interesting application, I think, because it seems like it's coming from an emerging, new organization that hasn't done maybe a lot of grant writing or a lot of fundraising seeking in the past, which I thought was really admirable, to kind of go forward with a project that's obviously very important to this organization, and they want to be able to offer these writing workshops. And they have a lot of really strong sentiment about the powerful kind of the outcomes of having writing workshops from a female-centric or female-identifying centric library component. So all of that I thought was really interesting. I had a little bit of concern or just confusion about how the library itself and the workshops are related, whether the library is really feeding the workshops, what's the kind of interconnected component there. The director of the library looks to be the teacher of the workshops themselves. And so that might just be kind of the way it's structured, but it seemed like from the past reports, when it was talking through the artist support section, that it was a little confusing to me with the amount of data that was in the I guess, what would you call it, the artist example, was a package of really, like, a lot of information, really robust and great data was compiled, but how that data really is driving or changing how the organization is doing the project. They did mention different ways that they were specifically responding to comments from participants, but I think the part that I really would have loved to know more about was how this project or workshop really is interconnected more broadly into the ecosystem of artists and writers in the area. Other than just being a class, what else is it doing? And that was the key thing that I think I was missing in some of the narrative components. It also, in the report that was submitted, it talks a little bit about the number of students that registered. It looked like in the past it had been 12 students, and then by the end of the class there were only 4 students in attendance, and I know that can happen with all kinds of different projects and doesn't have any bearing on the quality of the project at all. But I'd be curious to know more about responding to that, when you have sort of retainment is tricky with all classes. How do you plan to either navigate that? What were the reasons that might have happened? Is that something that can be fixed or changed? Those are sorts of outcomes I would have loved to know more about. Also, so the artists it appears that people pay for the class, which I understand, and that part of it was subsidized so that there would be no payment. So that I think is really great. That, if you're, I think it was under 18, you didn't have to pay, but, more clarity, I guess, about just like the reasoning behind that and how that works and why that's an issue that's being put for under 18 versus not people over 18. It's just sort of the arrangement of who is subsidized and why. A little more information on that I think would be helpful. And then, last, looking through the previous document as well, the only reason we have this is because it was communicated back to us, so it may not be entirely relevant, so I apologize if it isn't. But the previous report had some information about the cost to run the course, and the cost to run the course was listed as $1,500. But the cost for this particular grant is listed at $5,000. And so going through the budget, I thought the budget made a lot of sense as far as writing in components that were more of the administrative or just the overall, things that you need to have in order to be able to run the course. And maybe that's why, maybe that's the part that has been added in. And if so, that I think that's great. I think outlining why that is, or outlining what the change is, has why the changes happened, I think that's really helpful, because it's hard to understand when you look at things like the supply amounts, what's different about the past supplies that was only, $150 in the past, now is $800. And some of that may also have to do with the number of students that were being expected. And I guess that was my final question was, is that a really true and reasonable expectation? And is that the expectation, I think, ended up being about 40 students? And is that expectation doable, based on the number of people and that are really in part of the program? And if so, then I think that's great. I love that they had a lot of online components and in-person components. So maybe just more information about how that would work if you did have 40 students as opposed to 9 or 4. But then, if it's not realistic, then how does that change sort of the way that you lay out the budget or the way that you lay out the description of the program? But I think this is really, a great starting spot for a project and a workshop. And I think just a few elements that we're missing that would have helped clarify a lot of those questions.
Thank you, Aaron. A second reader is Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I just noted on here, one moment, please. This is the type of, from just the section of the budget, it's the type of budget that I crave in terms of, I'm not left second guessing what any administrative cost is. Every expense and category is completely laid out. So I think that should be noted that's very strong and is very helpful. The only other comment that I make is I think that in one section you say only 2 artists are being paid directly, but I see the main person and the guest lecturers all as artists. So I would expand that out. I mean, make sure we're including the guest lecturers as artists and the teachers as artists. That then raises at least something that's important to me, the percentage of your budget that's, quote unquote, going to artists, which I think for this particular grant is super important. So that's something I'm always looking at. Otherwise, enjoyed reading it. Appreciate it so much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chris. Any new, additional, or opposing panelist comments?
One thing I forgot to mention, and I just wanted to make a note of for the organization, that it looked like in the budget itself, let me see here, the space rental was listed twice, and that I wasn't sure what that was. What the relationship of that. One was a rent for 3 months, and one was just space rental. And also there was a section about teachers' pay at $20 per hour. And that caught me up a little bit because I didn't understand whether that was paying the teachers or the teachers were paying. So I'm assuming that that's paying teachers to participate, but more information about that element would have been really great. And I think it also would expand sort of the outreach connection.
All right, please finalize your scores. Let me know if you need more time. We all set? Good, let JC back in, please. You're always on top of it. I knew it. The next application is from Gang Central Indiana Community Foundation. I don't think we have any conflicts. JC, you're the first reader. When you're ready, please.
All righty. Thank you, Ryan. This application was incredibly thorough and detailed, which I really appreciated. So I thought pretty much every area of this application was really strong. The purpose of this project is clear. The goals are well detailed. The fact that this is an expansion upon a previous project, it appears to be a logical step for the organization as a whole. And it looks like they keep good track of what impacts that the events that they've held, or this previous iterations of this event. It looks like they've kept really good track of the impact that has had, and that kind of impact data looks at like authentic views from communities it's working on, and showcases the artists' experiences as well. And so going through to kind of the community engagement areas, again, really thorough and detailed. It looks like they work with multiple organizations to kind of pull this event off and coordinate and partner with those in the community that they're working to serve. And so that is a very, very strong area. Much appreciated for that. Let's see what else. And then for kind of the project management area, it looks like both the staffing that are working on this and the sponsors they're working with both have experience with this project in the past, or like experience with similar projects. And then so that was a real plus for me. It looks like they'll definitely be able to pull this off and enhance upon previous projects. And then I really enjoyed the project timeline. They have specific dates and times of when things are supposed to happen, including going past the event with complete evaluations and kind of follow up, whatnot. And then to me, it looked like the budget was well considered. And like I said before, I'm not quite a numbers person, but it looks like things make sense to me in that way. But otherwise, I don't have any real criticism. It seems like a very, very strong application to me.
Thank you, JC. Second reader is Alonda. When you're ready, please.
I agree with JC. I think this application was pretty strong. It was thorough. It detailed a lot. Looking at this, who they serve, what the outreach is. I think possibly maybe I overlooked it, but I think it was because of the event. It's how many people they serve. Is it throughout the whole year? Is it the event? I wasn't sure about that. I think I overlooked that. I'm not sure if I overlooked it, but overall the application is strong. And the participation, I think, is great. So I don't have anything else to add with that.
Thank you, Yolanda. Any new, additional, or opposing panelist comments?
I had a couple of suggestions with this application. And I think it's just also just the amount of information that you can put in an application can be really tricky to fit everything in. The one area where I really would have loved to have more information was sort of what would happen with the students specifically when they were engaged in the project or on the tour with the artist. When I kind of was just like thinking through the timeline and the budget, it looked like if you had 1,500 students participating across only 10 days, you would end up with, upwards of 5 tours a day. And that seems like a lot. Like I would be like, oh my gosh, at the end of the day. So I'm curious if that is, the end all be all goal. Is that just a hypothetical goal that you would have 1,500 students? Is there a different sort of timeline that could be presented to give more space for those students to have more dedicated time, at the event or with the program or with the artist? Exactly how would that work? It didn't seem like there was quite enough information about staffing and timeline to make that sound like it would be very stressful. But I think it's a really great project, and I absolutely agree that it's a wonderful next step for this organization.
All right, please finalize your scores and comments if needed. Let me know if you need more time. Seem to be working quick, so I won't cut you off. The next application is from Hendricks County Arts Council. I don't think we have any conflicts of interest here. First reader is Chris. When you're ready, please. You're on mute.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. 3 years in, I'm still doing that sometimes. I've got just one comment to make again, from my viewpoint, just to make this very strong proposal stronger. And then I'll just read my notes verbatim here. I think something else that can make your proposal stronger is discussing what the Hendricks County Arts Council as an organization is doing around IDA. You specifically discuss this project, but I'd like just to see not just the specific project, but also what the organization itself is doing. And I'll be honest with you, having the opportunity to read through these grants, that's not something I ever thought of. As a grant writer myself and reading other grants, a lot of times it was the IDA in terms of this one thing that we're doing, but how does that then speak to what we're doing as an organization? So maybe keep that in mind, add that, and it could just add some more overall color to your organization and strength to the application. Everything else that I read, I enjoyed reading, looked really good, and really appreciated your time.
Thank you, Chris. Second reader is Nancy. Nancy, when you're ready.
Yes, I would also agree with sort of clarifying the IDEA strategies a little bit more. But gold stars, I will steal Chris's phrase, gold stars, to project management section and the artistic quality. And it's a solid project. You've done it for 8 years, I think the grant said. And so you figured out how to maximize things and the benefit to all participants who are involved. So strong project.
Thank you, Nancy. Any new, additional, or opposing panelists' comments? All right, please finalize your scores. We all set? Okay. The next application is from the Indianapolis Film Project. I don't think we have any conflicts. First reader is Alonda. When you're ready, please.
Okay. All right. So far, I'm looking, I think this is a great project overall, and the application was detailed on how the outreach and engagement, what their goal is with this project. The education and the education piece and the training and how to keep the younger people actively involved is was great. I love the idea strategies and what the plan they're having and how they're working with, their partnerships with the university. Let's see. Yeah, so that's one. Okay, let me check my notes. Give me 1 second. I think I had my notes on here. All right. And so, yeah, so far I'm looking at the application. So it's very, it was detailed and giving all the, what the support is and what it looks like and the planning stages on how to implement each piece of it throughout the year. And so far, I think this was a pretty well thought out process on the film project as a whole. So I don't have anything else to add. And like I said, with numbers person, it looks like that is good. I did. Hold on. I believe. Oh, nope, never mind. Yep, that's it. I was reading and I did see what I was looking for. Yeah, that's it. The application was great for me. The detail, the way it's processed, everything. So I don't have any other thing to add for this one.
Thank you, Linda. We do not have a second reader. So are there any new, additional, or opposing panelists' comments? Nancy?
I would just comment that under the community engagement section, measuring impact, I'm not sure that using an online survey as the only route to collect feedback is very efficient. We have a culture of a plethora of online surveys that I know people don't take. So I don't know what the response would be, how much participation would be successful there.
Any other comments on this one? All right, please finalize your scores. Does anybody need any additional time? All right, this concludes APS Grants Panel 1 for Region 7. Applicants will be notified of the status of their grant following the June Commission meeting. If you have any questions, please contact Ryan Shelton. That's me, your regional arts partner. Thank you very much. And panelists, you could hold on.